Pastor Mark, will you explain what is meant by the parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew 25?
Oh, sure. I'll be glad to explain that parable of the 10 virgins. As most people know, there were 5 that were wise and there were 5 that were foolish. But one of the important things that I think that I want to explain that I think a lot of people misunderstand is I don't think the 5 wise are the bride. The 5 wise just get to attend the wedding. The 5 foolish do not get to attend the wedding. And I think that's important because when we go back and we realize that there was Adam and then Christ is the second Adam, there are patterns that are laid out in the Bible. And we know that when Eve, the bride of Adam, was created, she was out of a rib, so to speak, or a bone out of Adam's body. Adam's whole body did not become the bride. So I think it's the same thing with the body of Messiah. I don't believe the whole body of Messiah will become the bride. And you have to have attendance at a wedding. What good is a wedding if it's just the bride and the groom and they go to a justice of the peace? No, you're going to have a great wedding with a lot of attendance and a lot of guests. And in the Gospels, there are many parables about a king who has a marriage for his son, and he invites all these guests. And so there's all kinds of guests at the wedding, but they're not the bride, they're guests. As a matter of fact, in one of the parables, one of the guests doesn't have on the right clothing, and so that guest is put into outer darkness. Well, I believe that when it comes to the parable of the 10 virgins, what happens to the 5 foolish is they get to go through the tribulation, and the 5 wise don't necessarily go through the tribulation. They get to go to the wedding. Because there's another verse that's very interesting that talks about when the groom returns from the wedding, blessed are those that are watching, and he will then gird himself and he will serve them as they sit down to eat. So just because you're not at the wedding doesn't mean all is lost. But at the same time, we need to realize God is not a socialist. He's not a communist. Not everybody gets the same reward. We know in the Gospels it talks about those who bear fruit 30, 60, and 100-fold. We know in Corinthians it talks about those who build with gold and silver and precious stones versus those that build with wood, hay, and stubble. It says, yes, they get redeemed or saved, but they don't really have anything to show for it. In Malachi, it talks about those that turn many to righteousness will shine as the stars forever and ever. Well, we know stars have different magnitude. They all don't have the same magnitude. Well, it's the same thing. All of Israel was saved out of Egypt. All of Israel was baptized in the Red Sea. All of Israel was filled with the Spirit on the first Pentecost or Shavuot. And so in one sense, they were all the same, but in another sense, they weren't all the same because you had the common Israelite. Then you had the Levites who could draw closer to God. Then you have the priests who could even draw closer. And then what do you have? You have the high priest who could even draw even closer once a year. So there are different levels of responsibility. Just like with a husband and wife, they have kids. Everybody is loved. But it's a different relationship between the spouses versus the spouses and the kids. And so I really see the parable of the 10 virgins as telling us that some will make it to the wedding, some will not make it to the wedding, but he's not going to marry 5 virgins. This isn't Islam, where you get 70 virgins. Okay, he's only going to get one, and that's going to be his bride.